There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. The Secretary will read the order.
Debate on vote number 17, Higher Education and Training Appropriation Bill.
I now invite the Honourable the Minister of Higher Education and Training to introduce his budget vote. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Cabinet colleagues who are here today and Deputy Ministers, our Deputy Minister Mduduzi Manana, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Honourable Members of Parliament, our Director General and staff of the department, heads and executives of all our post-school organizations and institutions. Minister Nxesi was saying, I've rented a crowd. There is no rent a crowd. These are all our institutions up there. My wife and family, the second Deputy General Secretary of the SACP, Comrade Solima Paila, honored guests, my special guests who are here, our retirees. We've got those in our department who are retiring, who we've brought to this budget vote debate. Ladies and gentlemen and comrades, 20 years ago, the democratically elected government led by the ANC set out on a new path to dislodge and destroy the structures of the apartheid regime and embark on the tasks of building a new and better South Africa. We inherited a racially divided, patriarchal and highly unequal education system that, I should remind this House, by the way, some members on my left here were complicit in promoting and sustaining. Our policy interventions have thus been aimed at transforming the education system to overcome the legacy of apartheid and colonialism and to confront racial, gender, class, and other forms of inequality. As stated by President Zuma in his State of the Nation address on the 17th of June 2014, we have now entered the second phase of our transition from apartheid to a national democratic society. This requires radical socio-economic transformation to push back the triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. The President stated that this government will continue to invest in education and skills development, as that is the key to economic growth and development. Education remains, as the President stated, I quote, an apex priority for this government, unquote. Since the establishment of our department, we've made important advances. We have expanded enrollments in all post-school institutions, especially for blacks and other previously disadvantaged people. The expansion has been most pronounced in the technical and vocational education and training colleges, TVET colleges, which is the new name now of our FET colleges, where headcount enrollments have increased by over 130%. We have also established 3 new universities and have created the new National Institute of Humanities and Social Sciences. The National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, has expanded to include students in TVET colleges, and the amount disbursed annually has grown rapidly by approximately 270% since 2008. A turnaround strategy in colleges is in place. In our university sector, we are also focusing on priorities of infrastructure, especially student accommodation for historically disadvantaged institutions, supporting teaching and learning and producing the next generation of academics. We have emphasized bridging the gap between theory and practice in vocational and professional education through increased workplace learning wherever possible. And all employers must stop complaining. They must come to the party on vocational education and training by opening their workplaces to place students as well as lecturers where appropriate. Particular attention has been given to artisan development, and our Deputy Minister will elaborate on this. SETAs have been brought closer to the colleges and universities are working and are working to build partnerships between themselves, educational institutions and employers. We've also been investing in the establishment of a skills planning mechanism. In consultation with a wide range of stakeholders, we developed the white paper for post-school education and training, which I released in January this year. This is a comprehensive strategy for transforming the post-school system, and most of the new initiatives over the past 5 years are in alignment with it. We are currently developing a national plan from this white paper. For the 2014 medium-term expenditure framework, the department's budget, excluding direct charges, increases at an annual average rate of 6.8%, from 34.3 billion in 2013-2014 to 42 billion rands in 2016-17. The amount of 36.9 billion rands for 2014-15 is an increase of 2.5 billion or 7.4% on the 2013-14 allocation, excluding funds from the skills levy. The skills levy, which is channeled through the SETAs and the National Skills Fund, is expected to increase at an annual average rate of 9.5% from 12.3 billion in 2013-2014 to 16.1 billion in 2016-17. Guided by our white paper, all legislation pertaining to higher education and training will be reviewed. Amendments to all our pieces of legislation are envisaged during the next 5 years. My department will develop, in consultation with the Transformation Oversight Committee, a social inclusion policy framework for public comment. The intention of this policy framework is to ensure that all post-school institutions implement policies to overcome unfair discrimination of all kinds, as required by the Constitution. Incidences of racism and sexism, including gender-based violence such as rape and sex for marks, have been reported in the media over the past year. These and all other demeaning practices must be routed out of our system, and we expect all institutions to assist in doing this. Of particular concern to me is the persistence of authoritarian and semi-militaristic initiation practices at some universities that border on being racist and serve to make many students to feel excluded and marginalized, if not humiliated, actually. This appears to have been the case at Northwest University for the past 20 years. Furthermore, it is amazing that after 2 decades of democracy, unofficial but still real quotas still exist to limit the numbers of black students in university residences. I'm pleased, though, to say the Council of the Northwest University and the new Vice-Chancellor have assured me that such practices will stop. We will be monitoring this carefully, and I hope that other stakeholders will assist us. I want to make it absolutely clear that in South Africa, we no longer have Afrikaans or Zulu or Tswana universities. All our universities are South African universities and must serve all the people of our country. No university can be complacent in this regard, as discriminatory practices take many forms. The department will also develop a disability policy framework for the post-school sector. The framework will set norms and standards for the treatment of students and staff with disabilities in all aspects of university or college life, including academic life, culture, sport, and accommodation. Our top priority, Chairperson, honorable members, is to expand the TVET colleges, formerly FET, as I say, while improving their quality. Our turnaround strategy to improve the functioning of colleges is starting to bear fruit and will continue. As I mentioned, TVET enrollments have more than doubled over the past 4 years. Over the 2014-15 to 2016-17 period, we have allocated 18.5 billion rand, and this increases to 25.2 billion if we include the NSFAS TVET bursary allocation, to ensure that TVET college enrollments continue this expansion. To correct this distribution, 2.5 billion rand has been committed by the department towards the refurbishment of 2 existing TVET college campuses and the building of 12 new campuses, all in underserved rural areas. Construction at 3 campus sites are about to commence. With the help of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, SAICA, my department has continued to deploy qualified support chief financial officers to all TVET colleges. We are also ensuring appointment of capable human resources managers and student support practitioners. And also, I'm pleased to announce that the Auditor General now is going to be taking over the auditing of our TVET colleges. And we are starting with the first 15 for the 2013-2014 financial year. All TVET college principals and deputy principals have successfully been transferred to my department from the provincial education departments with effect from 1st of April last year. I've also appointed councils to all colleges. With regards to the process of shifting responsibility for the colleges to the national government, collective agreements on the transfer of lecturers and support staff have been finalized. In line with our white paper, we will conduct a review of the entire gamut of vocational qualifications. We expect this will be done with the collaboration of the Department of Basic Education, so as to develop an array of qualifications that are nationally coherent and fit for purpose. In addressing the challenges of those students who need to improve their maths and science marks before entering particular programs at college or university level, we are developing a TVET college-based Maths and Science Foundation program at a higher certificate level. Hear that? We're moving South Africa forward with post-school education and training, Honorable Chair and members. South Africa has millions of youth who leave school with a senior certificate or less, who cannot access opportunities for further education. And we also have millions of adults who wish to study further. Currently, our public adult learning centers serve approximately 300,000 individuals, which is woefully inadequate. Provision must be extended. That is why we will be grouping these centers into a new institution called the community colleges, which will involve both providing for formal education but also for vocational type programs. A draft national policy on community colleges will soon be gazetted, and I urge all stakeholders to interact with it and give feedback. On universities, over the next 5 years, it is my intention to consolidate the work done since 2009 to ensure that the higher education system is effectively integrated into the post-school education and training system. In line with the vision outlined in our white paper, we are expecting to grow this sector from a headcount enrollment of 953,000 in 2012 to approximately 1.1 million students in 2019. This is well on the way to achieve our target of 1.6 million students in public universities by 2030. Aside from expanding enrollment, we also need to focus on quality and students' success. And we expect our universities to focus on improving their graduate production from 165,000 in 2012 to approximately 217,000 in 2019. We expect higher graduation rates, in other words, during this term. To support better efficiency and success, we are expanding foundation programs for prepared school leavers. We have also set aside 609 million rands to teaching development grants to support a better teaching and learning environment in our universities. As mentioned earlier, I have established 3 new universities. University of Mpumalanga and Salt Lake University. Each university has a 10 to 15-year development plan, and we have set aside 3.1 billion rands over the next 3 years to infrastructure development of the 2 universities. The 3rd new university, the Sefako Makgatho Health Sciences University, was legally established this year. I will formally incorporate the Medunsa campus of the University of Limpopo into SMU, the Sefako Makgatho University, later this year. And its first intake will be 5,000 students next year. And it will be a comprehensive health sciences university offering higher certificates right up to PhD programs and embracing medicine and broader health and allied sciences professional programs. I also recently published a policy for the provision of distance education in South Africa for the post-school sector in order to expand opportunities. We'll use innovative technologies and open education resources in order to achieve this. We've also maintained a strong focus on teacher education. In 2013, approximately 14,700 new teachers graduated compared to only 6,885 in 2009. An increase of 113% in new teachers per annum. In the next 5 years, we will expand beyond provision of teachers for basic education to include production of teachers for the whole system, including early childhood development, TVET colleges, community colleges, and our public universities. Our projections are that public universities will produce in excess of 23,000 new teachers annually by 2020. We are also going to be focusing on increasing PhDs amongst university academics from 39% in 2012 to 47% in 2019, and we have also created entry posts for young, especially for young and black women and women academics into our system, so as to encourage them to go and teach. And we've set aside 180 million rands in research development grants to universities in this regard. We have allocated 2012-2013 to 2014-15 period 6 billion rands towards infrastructure projects for our universities, which includes 210 million rands for the Sefako Makgatho Health Sciences University, but excludes the 3.1 billion rands for Mpumalanga and Salt Lake universities. 2.3 billion has been committed towards infrastructure projects. We have invested 1.6 billion for the same period on student accommodation, and 1.4 of that 1.6 billion goes to historically disadvantaged universities. The amount, together with the 700 million rands contribution from different universities, will provide at least 9,000 new beds for the system. On the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, access to quality higher education for the poor is an essential aspect of the transformation of our country. NSFAS, as we call it, remains the cornerstone and actually one of our biggest achievements by this ANC-led government over the last 20 years. It remains our cornerstone to support the poor and working class students. No amount of collecting old magogos from Khayelitsha here by the DA to come and march, and kids who are supposed to be at school to try and distract us. They do this because they know. And in fact, it's shameful, Honorable Chair, that when we send Cuban students, South African students to study in Cuba, not a single student has been sent by the DA government from the Western Cape. None. You are opposing 1% levy for government departments for SETAs to absorb young black learnerships. Yet you come and march here for NSFAS. It really is very shameful. You must try and do better, even if we are an opposition party. NSFAS, since its inception, has supported more than 1.4 million students. We talk of the growth of the black middle class in this country largely because of NSFAS. And the department's allocation to NSFAS will amount to 6.1 billion rands plus 2 billion for technical and vocational continuing education and training colleges, supplemented further by 2 billion made available through NSFAS and other means. This compares to 2.4 billion in 2008. Allow me, Chairperson, to conclude by thanking the Deputy Minister of our department, the entire staff of the DHET led by the Director General, Mr. Gwebs Konde, my personal staff in the ministry and to our public entities. Finally, my sincere gratitude also goes to the President and my cabinet colleagues for their support. Together, we will move South Africa forward through the provision of quality and affordable post-school education and training. Siyabonga.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The next speaker is the Honourable Posa, who will deliver a maiden speech.
The Honourable Chairperson, the Honourable Minister and Deputy Minister, and the other members of the executive present here this morning, the Director General and the officials of the Department of Higher Education and Training, leaders of universities and technical, vocational education and training institutions, heads of all the entities of the Department of Higher Education and Training, all dignitaries present, and ladies and gentlemen. We are gathered here today to necessarily debate the Department of Higher Education and Training Budget Vote 17. This occurs 4 days after the country and indeed the world celebrated the Nelson Mandela International Day, in honor of our global icon, the former president of the country, Dr. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. It is through his inspiring and visionary leadership that we are reminded that, I quote, "It is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of the mine, that a child of farm workers can become the president of a great nation," end quote. In this context, we ought to collectively work together, freeing the potential of the youth of our country as envisioned by the forebearers of our Constitution. Let me also take this moment to pay my profound respect to the late Professor R. Botman, the former Vice-Chancellor of the Stellenbosch University, and the late Professor F. de Villiers, the former Dean of Faculty of Law of the University of Zululand. As a sector in particular, and as a country in general, we have indeed lost esteemed academics. Their departure has left a void in our sector. However, we are eternally grateful for their immense contribution. The ANC's original approach to education and training was reverted to in 2009 when President Jacob Zuma restructured government during the appointment of the new cabinet. He categorically stated that the aim was to enable government to achieve visible and tangible socio-economic development within the 5 years of the fourth administration. The restructuring was further meant to enable effective implementation of the African National Congress policies, progressive policies. The department was split into a Department of Basic Education, which deals only with schooling, and the Karigude Adult Literacy Campaign on the one hand, and the Department of Higher Education and Training on the other. The latter takes responsibility for higher education, the college sector, including the FET colleges and other colleges such as nursing and agricultural colleges, all post-literacy adult education, and broadly workplace skills development. The latter includes the infrastructure of the SETAs as well. Flowing from the President's pronouncement, the Minister of Higher Education and Training, in his 2009 budget vote speech, articulated that, I quote, "Therefore, one of our immediate tasks is to create a diverse and differentiated post-school system to provide a diverse range of learning opportunities for the youth and the adults. This system will be realized through, amongst others, the improved alignment of the university, college, and sectoral education and training authority, SETA's systems," end quote. Today, we are debating the first budget of the post-school education and training sector in the 5th Parliament. We are simultaneously celebrating 20 years of freedom and democracy. It gives us an opportune time to reflect on the path we have traveled as we now cast our eyes into the future with great optimism. Through our reflection of the higher education sector, over the years, there are many, many achievements that have been recorded in our country. There is no doubt that so much ground has been covered since 1994 with regards to the transformation of the country's education system from where it was pre-1994. Such achievements over the years are an indication that the African National Congress-led government has been committed in transforming education for the benefit of the people of this country and the youth in particular. Through our reflection, we also are alive to the challenges facing our education system and the valuable lessons that have emerged in the process as the department and its stakeholders tackled the varied strategic tasks for a better tomorrow as envisaged in the National Development Plan. It is clear, though, that the challenges in the education sector require the involvement and participation of the society at large. All of us, as stakeholders, within our respective mandates, must therefore work with the department to ensure continued success of our education system for the benefit of this country. This is important, and Madiba alluded to this importance when he said, I quote, "Education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world," end quote, which South Africa is part of. Honorable Chairperson, our President, in his State of the Nation address, affirmed that education and skills development constitutes the apex priority necessary for the sustained success of our country. As we collectively share this vision, we necessarily support the commitments to further invest in education and skills development. This emanates from our collective recognition that our country is still grappling with the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. When the department was established in 2009, priorities were set in the medium-term strategic framework of 2009 to 2014, focusing on post-school and training, with special focus on the delivery of Outcome 5, which is a skilled and a capable workforce to support an inclusive growth path. Progress has been made towards achieving the deliverables emanating from this outcome. I'm saying this coming from the vigorous engagement with the department, and indeed, I repeat, progress has been made towards the achievement of these deliverables emanating from this outcome. In creating a seamless post-school education and training, the department took over the functions of two ailing sectors, which are the technical and vocational education and training colleges and adult education and training from the provincial education departments and sector education training authorities from the Department of Labor. The department's focus in the main was also to align and implement policies and ensuring compliance with the legislation. However, working together in the implementation of these policies and also balancing our compliance our performance with compliance indeed can help the department to do more and do better, even much better. However, Chairperson, we are mindful that higher education institutions are autonomous, but our country still needs higher education that is efficient, effective, credible, and accountable. Although the higher education sector is fairly stable, there were some challenges with some universities in relation to governance and management matters. These, of course, compelled the minister to appoint independent assessors and subsequently administrators. The turnaround strategy by the department aimed at improving the administrative function and to protect the use of this fiscus of these institutions has indeed yielded positive results, because from where we are standing, there has been a great improvement in these areas of intervention by the department. We commend the ministry for taking bold measures to strengthen governance and ensure sustainability of these institutions tasked with human resource development and knowledge production of our country. Presently, we can confidently report that all the universities are successfully out of administration. I think the department deserves a round of applause in this regard. And the committee recommends sustainability of this good practice. During the vigorous engagement with the department, it was reported that only about 3 TVET colleges are still under administration, but you can rest assured that there is a turnaround strategy that was presented to us on request, and even with this one, we'll end up taking all of them out of administration. It will also be important to mention that it was reported that all TVET colleges have functional councils, which are imperative in ensuring good governance and effective administration. Of significance for now is that the Council on Higher Education is undertaking a study to investigate the effectiveness of independent assessor and administrators in strengthening governance at universities. We will be awaiting for the outcome of this necessary study to ensure that all of us put our hands on deck in addressing these challenges of our time. Honorable Chairperson, after 20 years of democracy, our higher education sector has successfully achieved high levels of representation in terms of race and gender. The Council of Higher Education 2011 vital stats show that the percentage of African students increased from 61% in 2006 to 79% in 2011. Our government has ensured that the financial circumstances of the majority of our youth should not be a barrier to accessing higher education and TVET colleges. This was realized through the investment made through the National Financial Aid Scheme to fund academically capable students who come from poor backgrounds. The 2011 NSFAS review report alluded that the scheme provides financial aid which creates access to higher education for students who would otherwise not be able to attend university. The committee is encouraged that in 2013, the scheme disbursed about 8.7 billion in loans and bursaries to 416,000 students at the 23 public universities and 50 TVET colleges. What is appreciable about NSFAS is that 40% of the loan for university students is converted into a bursary, and the interest rate is at 4%, lower than that of commercial banks. We believe that this bursary scheme provided to students from disadvantaged families should be used as a catalyst for improving their lives, contributing towards their better lives, the better lives of their families, the better lives of their communities, and the better lives of everyone in the country. The challenge identified in our engagement with NSFAS is that the demand does not match the available resources, and consequently, only 50% of the eligible students could be funded in a financial year. In 2013, the budget shortfall reported on the continuing student is 2.6 billion, and this is found to be common in historically disadvantaged institutions, which enroll a higher number of students from poor backgrounds. I want to believe that as we move forward, I'm sure the Department of Finance, National Treasury will look into this matter and take this into consideration and consider increasing the budget, especially in this area of work. In the light of these realities, we call for a strengthened administration of NSFAS for the benefit of all the deserving students from disadvantaged families. The financial contributions of the National Skills Fund and the sector education and training authorities remain significant. We can report that despite some challenges that still exist, there is some collaborations and support between universities and TVET colleges in terms of student bursaries, placement of students in the workplace for work-integrated learning and infrastructure expansion. We would like this progress to continue. In his delivery agreement, the minister committed to increasing access to occupationally directed programs in needed areas and thereby expanding the availability of intermediate level skills, e.g. different kinds of engineers, technical skills, skills for green economy, etc., that are most needed as economic drivers. We commend the department for its successful delivery in this regard. Reportedly, the student headcount enrollment in the TVET programs has increased by 90%, which is 345,566 in 2010 to 657,690 in 2013. Of significance is the clearance of the backlog of certification of TVET, National Certificate Vocational, by
Honourable
the
Member,
department.
your time is now expired.
I would like to thank the department, the Honourable Minister, the Deputy Minister, and all the officials from the department, but also all the members of the committee for their meaningful engagement in the discussions in the committee. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Bozoli.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I would like to begin by congratulating Minister Blade Nzimande on his reappointment to the Cabinet and to the higher education portfolio. As a fellow social scientist, I look forward to working with you and your department towards the goal of creating an excellent 21st century higher education system. To me, universities are one of the great achievements of humankind. For over 1,000 years, longer than the life of any party, government, or corporation, they have nurtured greatness, thoughtfulness, and invention, and have protected freedom of inquiry. The richness of human experience is reflected in what they teach and learn. As a newly elected MP, I intend to bring to the attention of the public three essential things: that we need to protect and further develop our universities for the sake of our future, that a high-quality, high-level, and fully diversified post-school education system is not a luxury, but a necessity for the 21st century, and that although the government has set out proposals to establish such a system in its recent white paper, summarized by the minister in his speech, it is unlikely that it will ever happen if we continue along the present path. There is a mismatch between the fine words the minister spoke and the reality on the ground, which I believe many in the gallery would have felt in their hearts as they listened. If the NDP's vision of a post-resources economy is to be realized, we need effective educational institutions at the very highest levels. We all know that we will stand or fall in the 21st century by our ability to educate highly able professionals and thinkers in every area of endeavor. The risk is as follows. As a result of its weak school system and its failure to grow the economy, the government is faced with a mass of 3.5 million unemployed and in many cases unemployable people under the age of 24. These young people are beginning to constitute a threat to the ANC's power base. What is their solution? It is to cram as many of these hapless young people as possible, as fast as possible, and as cheaply as possible into tertiary institutions. The rhetoric is that this will provide them with the skills they need to find work and the skills the economy needs to grow. The reality is that this is not going to be the outcome. Let us take two areas in which this strategy is supposed to be operating. First, the universities. Over the past 20 years, hundreds of thousands more students have been admitted into universities. There are now just under 1 million of them, up from 500,000 in 1994. In many ways, this is an admirable achievement. There is nothing wrong with broadening access. It is a desirable goal, which the DA obviously supports. But the ANC has done this without a matching increase in budget. There have been increases, but they do not match the numbers increased. In real terms, government funding per student actually fell by over 10% between 2000 and 2010. As a result, universities are groaning under the strain, classrooms are often crammed beyond capacity, the infrastructure is falling behind, class sizes have increased, making teaching more anonymous and less effective, academic staff are demoralized, and the failure and dropout rates of students remain shockingly high. 50% fail to complete their degrees. And if the department thinks that mass distance methods provide an easy solution, it should remember that the majority of these failures and dropouts are UNISA students. Furthermore, research is severely underfunded. Quality is difficult to sustain. Our researchers are subjected to a productivity regime which keeps them on the treadmill, but pays little or no attention to their real needs. In the most expensive areas in research, we remain decades behind the curve. And this is in the universities that are working. 5 universities out of 25, 20% of them, have recently been under administration, as we've heard. Several more are limping along. They are plagued by riots, poor governance, appalling teaching, bad leadership, an almost complete absence of research and infrastructure decay. It is impressive that in spite of this onslaught of numbers and shrinkage of budgets, several of our universities, such as UCT, WITS, and Stellenbosch, have managed to sustain an extraordinary level of worldwide recognition. They have done so, Honourable Chair, without the support or blessing of the Minister, who has rubbished international rankings and who rarely talks of quality or excellence. Instead, Minister Nzimande constantly attacks the good universities, mainly for being not transformed enough. Yes, this is an important matter, but is being transformed all there is? Fort Hare was recently named the most transformed university in the country. This is in a bizarre recent departmental report commissioned by the Minister, which claims to have developed a mathematical formula to measure degrees of transformation. Yet amazingly, senior members of the ANC do not appear to be sending their children to Fort Hare or other mathematically calculated, most transformed institutions. They send them to the best universities. Do they know something the Honourable Minister does not know? Minister Nzimande also uses divide and rule tactics, pitting historically black universities against the rest. And yet, our 2 historically black universities, after 20 years of ANC rule, the universities with the proudest traditions, Fort Hare and the former Turfloop, both have been reduced to the most shameful state under the ANC rule. Both have experienced long periods of administration, which is just really a euphemism for bankruptcy, institutional collapse, and receivership. And what about the other solution for mass unemployment and poverty? The old FET colleges, now called TVETs. There are 50 of them, and they educate 650,000 young people in technical trade and other occupations. Many more than 50% of these students drop out or fail. The ANC-led government sees these as places which can educate the unemployed at a rapid rate, boost our flagging economy, and mop up the disgruntled poor. But are they doing this? No, is the short answer. After 20 years of neglect and mismanaged reform, by the way, if you have a turnaround strategy, it's a turnaround from your own 20 years of rule. According to the department's presentation to the Portfolio Committee, and here comes the euphemism again, they are under administration. 13 of them are undergoing forensic review, again according to the Department Portfolio Committee presentation, implying gross financial mismanagement. Transformation in these colleges appears to have been so rapid that one of the department's own reports said that they lack institutional memory and stability. The department is taking over these colleges from the provinces, but it has not dealt with the constitutional obstacles to the transfer of the budget. The Honourable Minister has nevertheless developed plans to cram 150,000 more students into these colleges long before these fundamental problems are fixed. When challenged on this, he said, "We are going to have to fix the aeroplane while it is already flying." What this already means is that tens of thousands of young people, almost all of them poor, will do badly in failing institutions and will never succeed in their occupation of choice. But that's not all. The department is, in addition, planning to build 12 more TVET campuses, absorb the agricultural colleges, and perhaps even, too little and too late, expand teacher education. It has also developed an ill-conceived central application service with some dodgy tender procedures which are likely to surround it, which sounds as likely to succeed as the presidential hotline. And all the while, its budget does not increase proportionately. The Auditor General himself has expressed concern about the inadequacy of higher education's 50.3 billion rand budget. The department, he says, will be unable to meet its goals. The Portfolio Committee agreed. This leads us to perhaps the most fundamental question of all. Why does the budget not increase sufficiently? Why is higher education expenditure only 12% of total education expenditure? For Africa as a whole, it is 20%. For OECD countries, it is 23%. And for the world as a whole, it is 19.8%. We are way behind international benchmarks. Does the Treasury perhaps have a problem with Minister Nzimande? Or is it that the ANC of today increasingly relies on the retrograde nationalism of the dispossessed peasantry? It is led by a less well-educated rural big man and his atavistic followers. It is failing in the cities, originally the base for its support. As a result, it is so busy harking back to the 18th century that it seems to find it difficult to engage seriously with the demands of modernity, let alone post-modernity. Perhaps it is not surprising that higher education is so badly neglected. Honourable Chair, I fear that under the ANC, many universities and colleges are becoming corruption zones and riot factories. You can't neglect higher education and pursue the NDP. And you can't do higher education on the cheap. You will end up crashing the plane, even while you're trying to fix it, and you will destroy the futures of our children. Thank you.
The next speaker is the Honourable Mbata.
Honourable Minister, Honourable Deputy Minister,
Order, honourable members.
Honourable Minister, Honourable Deputy Minister, esteemed guests, fighters at home, higher education is probably the most important way in which the black majority will have been moved out of poverty. Higher education, at one point, had the opportunity to make sure that we steadily move the country to inclusive country and a united country. If we did declare higher education a fee-free opportunity for all South Africans in the first Parliament of 1994, we would have by today, Honourable Minister, produced more black, middle-class than you currently have today. Higher education in 1994 should have been a fee-free opportunity for all South Africans. This would have been the only justification to pay for the sins of apartheid. Because when apartheid dealt a heavy blow to black families and black lives, one of the most important tools it used was higher education. It made a point that black families, at least not in their massive scale, received higher education. Honorable Minister, you have indeed established 2 new universities, but these 2 new universities are only attended by a couple of hundred this year. And these 2 new universities, as in your projections, in the next 10 years, will at least attract an enrollment of 10,000 students. Today, as we sit, the basic education produces approximately between 400 learners per year in matric, out of a total of estimates of about 700 learners who write. We will steadily never be able to accommodate the massiveness that we should have in the higher education system. We therefore believe in the following. We believe that the expansion of higher education should be radically done so as to enable higher education to again attract families, poor black families, out of the poverty cycle and make sure that we create a cycle disconnection between the families of the old and the new generation families. Expanding higher education will require a heavy investment, but more so, it will require the establishment of clear plans by universities, current universities, of how they themselves will grow. For instance, how about targeting year 2019 and say the University of Cape Town will most likely have an intake of 50,000. That is the kind of contribution with quality that we would love to see going forward. The SETAs must be aligned to industrial policy and industrial objectives of the country. The department must have a scholarship that takes a year, at least 10,000 students to best universities in the world. We also call on the ministry to consider advising NSFAS to cancel the historical debt. This is the very same historical debt, Honorable Minister, that traps young professionals from living sustainable livelihoods. We need a medical school in each and every university, Honorable Minister, so as to enable injection of good professionals, in particular black professionals, to our public health system. Because if you are to break the bone between public health system and private, you must inject out of your own. Higher education must work with basic education to ensure that grade 11 and 12 at least have access to a computer with internet and a laboratory in every black school. If you do not do that, Honorable Minister, you will spend the next 20 years of your rule still producing, in particular, black, ill-prepared, not ready, high school learners who will enter higher education. Thank you very
Honourable
much.
Member, thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Mponchane.
Mhlonishwa sihlalo mhlonishwa ungqongqoshe lephini lika ngqongqoshe nongqongqoshe abakhona. The NDP document describes the performance of our institutions as both excellent and mediocre. But of course, referring to the NDP document may not be a very helpful exercise, as I don't think the Honourable Minister is a fervent supporter of the NDP, taking into account his political orientations. Angithi Mpepetwa. The mediocre description speaks directly to the infrastructure at some of our universities, especially the previously disadvantaged institutions. The department in our fourth parliament tabled a research document on hostel accommodation. It portrayed a horrible picture of the living conditions of those students who have no choice other than to reside in the pigsty-like places. The challenges which the department faces can be classified into three broad categories. One category is the insufficient funding. Second category is the management or the lack thereof. The third one is the mixture of both funding and mismanagement. Take, for instance, the NSFAS. Since its inception, it has reached a billion mark. Yet we have been told that this academic year, only half of the eligible applicants could receive loans and bursaries. Clearly, this is a case of funds not being adequate. The department is talking of holding a workshop on how to manage funding expectations. This is very problematic, Honourable Minister, because on one hand, we're encouraging students or learners to pursue higher education. But we turn around, we say, we have a workshop to manage the expectations. This is very problematic. I feel for you, Honourable Minister. But on the other hand, it is the case of the scheme not being managed effectively. The weaknesses in the vetting of applicants have ensured that the wrong people are receiving loans and bursaries. Here again, the department is centralizing the NSFAS application system. The question remains, how will this centralization stop people from defrauding the scheme? Because the scheme is being defrauded, Honourable Minister. Now, we will need more details from the department how it's going to achieve this, because we argue that if there's no attitudinal change among both the recipients of the scheme and those who manage the scheme, the centralization of NSFAS will be like pouring new wine into old vessels. One of the challenges that have been pointed out by the NDP is a curriculum that does not speak to our society's needs. The NDP speaks of FET colleges which are not effective enough either. The number of graduates produced each year in some of our institutions does not meet the needs of our society and only help to increase the number of the unemployed youth. Further, the document speaks of some of the academic staff at some of our higher institutions, particularly in our FET institution, who are insufficiently qualified. Some of these challenges, the NDP argues, can be traced back to the schooling years, as poor teaching from barely qualified teachers does little to prepare students for the rigorous requirements of both university and FET study. The issue of educators who lack sufficient content knowledge has been acknowledged by the quality watchdog Umalusi. I'm mentioning these issues, Honourable Minister, because the training of teachers is the responsibility of your department. I've just heard you, Minister, which is commendable, that we have produced more than 8,800 teachers. But let's move from the numbers now. Let's look at the quality of those teachers who are being produced by our institutions. The poor performance, Honourable Minister, of our municipalities has been ascribed to, amongst other things, the lack of skilled personnel. The same thing you hear, for instance, from the Department of Water and Sanitation. You hear the number of dysfunctional water schemes, and the refrain from these departments is the lack of skills, especially the engineering skills. Even when one questions the excessive use of consultants by some of these departments, the response is the lack of skills. Your response, Honourable Minister. Is it a matter of your sector pumping out graduates with irrelevant qualifications? Or is it a matter of poor coordination between your department and other departments? I was happy, Honourable Minister, I did attend the budget vote by the Minister Kodam, where he mentioned that there's going to be partnership between yourself and his department. The IFP, hopefully, Minister, what happened to you yesterday, you have overcome it, taking off racism, but IFP will support the budget vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now call upon the Deputy Minister of Higher Education.
Honourable House Chairperson, the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Dr. Nzimande, Ministers and Deputy Ministers present, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Honourable Posa, Members of Parliament, Director General and staff of the department, heads and executives of all our post-school entities and institutions, the Second Deputy General Secretary of the SSCP, Comrade Solly Mapaila, the ANC National Task Team Coordinator, Comrade Makasela Mzobe, our honored guests, comrades and friends. Honorable Chairperson, let me just start by saying to Honorable Bozoli, who regrettably happens to be my former sociology lecturer, that the reason why we are led by an uneducated rural person is because when she was enjoying the fruits of white minority rule, this person she refers to was fighting to liberate this country, jailed and exiled. Jailed and exiled so that we can enjoy the fruits of this democracy. Honorable Chairperson, it gives me great pleasure to address this House today on budget vote number 17 of the Department of Higher Education and Training. This first budget of the 5th Parliament consolidates the good story that was clearly articulated by the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency J.G. Zuma, in both his 2014 State of the Nation addresses and elaborated further by honorable members of this House during the State of the Nation debates. The Minister of Higher Education and Training has, through his budget speech today, given much impetus on the good story about the post-school system that we are desiring for this country. Whilst the next 5 years of this government will seek to consolidate the gains of the last 20 years of our democracy, the department has equally redefined the trajectory of the post-school education and training system going forward. This new landscape is aimed at ensuring that our education and training system breaks the vicious cycle of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. Honorable members, we will continue building the system guided by the imperatives of our second phase of the transition and further guided by the National Development Plan and the White Paper on Post-School Education and Training. Our road to 2030 will be a radical one, but it will be achieved in steps, the first of which will be the 2014 to 2019 medium-term strategic framework, which articulates the mandate given to government, a mandate that has at its apex the priority of education and training. Honorable Chairperson, let me now focus and unpack a few key strategic objectives of the department as they relate to artisan development, youth development programs, career development, and the Apply Now campaign, improving access to post-school education and training for people with disabilities, and our endeavors to eradicate the impact of the dual epidemics on HIV and TB in order to promote a sense of healthy well-being within our sector. Honorable members, fellow South Africans, I am pleased to announce that we have now put in place the building blocks for the rebuilding of our artisanal training system in the country. Our renewed focus on intermediate skills, especially artisan-related skills, is aimed at aggressively supporting government's push for infrastructure development and industrialization as key drivers of economic growth. In February this year, I launched the Decade of the Artisan Advocacy Program, born out of the successful Year of the Artisan program in 2013, where we managed to reach every corner of this country, conversing with our young people on the importance of taking up artisanship as a career of choice. Our target is to produce 19,000 competent artisan candidates by the 31st of March 2015, and this drive is geared towards achieving the National Development Plan target of producing 30,000 competent artisans annually by 2030. And with resources allowing, we will be able to achieve the NDP target earlier than directed. In order to achieve this, we'll also bolster the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations, whose remit will include operationalization of the National Artisan Moderation Body. We're strategically positioning our technical and vocational education and training colleges to play a decisive role in the production of high-caliber artisans. Honorable Chairperson, there are also interesting developments in the area of renewable energy which the department has decided to support. The Cape Peninsula University of Technology, in partnership with an initiative called GREEN, are establishing the South African Renewable Training Energy Center at the Belleville campus of CPUT, the first of its kind in the country and in the continent. Our department, through the National Skills Fund, has allocated 105 million rands over the three-year period, 2013 to 2016, for infrastructure and initial running costs. This initiative, Honorable Chairperson, takes cue from the bold announcement on energy renewal made by the President during the State of the Nation address. As part of enabling SETAs to contribute to and complement national efforts aimed at reducing unemployment and alleviating poverty, especially among the South African youth, I requested both the Manufacturing and Engineering SETA and the Energy and Water SETA to train the vulnerable youth of Mitchell's Plain and Khayelitsha here in the Western Cape Province on solar geyser installation, and thus shield them from the high temptation of drug usage, crime, idleness, and destructive acts to themselves and their communities. I'm happy to report that training of 500 learners will commence this week, giving credence to our commitment of green skills for sustainable communities. Honorable Chairperson, in 2013, I launched WellSkills South Africa, and subsequent to this, the department initiated a process to establish a formal governance structure for WellSkills South Africa. The WellSkills competition offer aspiring artisans a platform to demonstrate their knowledge and skills, whilst at the same time compete with their peers from more than 70 countries of the world. In the interim, the SETA CEO Forum Artisan Development Subcommittee is overseeing preparation for the next WellSkills competition in Brazil to be held from the 11th to the 16th of August 2015. This subcommittee is the most appropriate structure to utilize, as the occupations involved in the WellSkills competition are artisan-related. The South African national competition will take place from the 28th to the 31st of January 2015 in Cape Town, and this will be preceded by regional competitions hosted by our TVET colleges. We are happy that employers from the various sectors are pledging their support through providing sponsorships, training of participants, and equipment for the competitions. Honorable Chairperson, let me take this opportunity and inform the House that last week on the 14th of July 2014, I met with the Vice President of Samsung, Dr. Ji Ho Song, and his delegation from South Korea, and I took them through a number of our TVET programs and visited selected institutions in the Western Cape. We are forming a partnership with Samsung, and they've made an undertaking to sponsor young South Africans to be trained in IT software solutions, IT network systems, and web design in South Korea in September this year. Honorable Chairperson, following my visit to 2 mining communities in the Northwest Province last year, where I had an opportunity to interact with a number of young people who pleaded with me to intervene in their plight of poverty and unemployment. They pleaded with me that they need skills in order to improve their employment prospects. I am happy to report that together with the Mining Qualifications Authority, we have trained 1,000 young people in portable skills and entrepreneurship around a number of our mining communities, including the 2 that I visited. The MQA allocated an amount of 25 million rands for training in bricklaying, plumbing, electricity, house wiring, life skills, business and entrepreneurial skills. Some of the youth were trained in level 1 and 2 mining, in which they will be opportuned to permanently join the nearby mines. One of my special guests today in the public gallery is Mr. Richard Mbulelo, who trained in electricity, basic house wiring, and advanced entrepreneurial skills, and who gave a moving testimony that the program has indeed enabled him to be confident as a young South African. These programs were implemented in various municipalities, such as Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District Municipality, Matlosane Local Municipality, Sekhukhune District Municipality, Merafong Local Municipality, and Bojanala District Municipality. At the program launch and certification event in both Klerksdorp and Carletonville, I further made a call to mining houses to join government in the skilling of young people, and I'm happy to report that Anglo Gold Ashanti has since trained an additional 315 young people in developing this framework. Honorable members, will be to set out norms and standards for the integration of students and staff with disabilities in all aspects of university and college life. We are very serious, honorable members, and committed to improving access to post-school education and training for persons with disability. Honorable Chairperson, one of my very important tasks is to oversee the initiative to develop and strengthen the HIV, TB, STIs prevention, treatment, care, and support interventions in the entire post-school sector. We are doing this in response to the South African National Strategic Plan on HIV, STIs, and TB 2012 to 2016. The Higher Education Aids, led by Dr. Ramnik Alwalia, is one of our vehicles to implement comprehensive healthcare programs within all the South Africa's public higher education institutions and TVET college campuses, catering for close to 2 million young population of students and staff. HAIDS has also begun implementing comprehensive programs that respond to the impact of the dual epidemics, HIV, STIs, and TB in the higher education and training sector through the launch of our own strategic plan called the Higher Education and Training Strategic Framework on HIV, TB, STI that I launched on the 1st of December 2012. Since I announced the extension of the HAIDS program into the FET college sector in December 2012 as a landmark victory, all programs have been extended to students in the TVET sector that have never received such support in the past. I am proud to announce that through a recent 2014 independent national survey, it has been shown that the campaign has been able to get a total of 40% first-time testers to be screened for HIV, STIs, and TB in the sector, whilst a total of 75% were motivated to test and gained knowledge on HIV, TB, and STIs, and other healthcare services due to the massive advocacy and awareness done through the HAIDS First Things First program. This means that the young people in our country are now able to access HIV prevention, treatment, care, and support, hence a healthy and prolonged lifestyle for them and their families. Honorable members, we have an obligation to engage our youth if we are to build a strong, skilled, and capable workforce in regard to issues related to HIV and AIDS. And in this regard, youth dialogues are being held around the country to teach our young people about the dangers and the risk of these kind of diseases. A program that I launched at the University of the Witwatersrand towards the end of the fourth administration was actually giving credence to this matter. Honorable Chairperson, we remain committed to the cause of sending students abroad. During the debate on the State of the Nation address, I outlined our plans and gave clear figures of students who are outside the country and those that we intend sending abroad this year. One of my special guests today in our public gallery is Ms. Tsepang Mashilwane, Monica Mashilwane, who is part of the group of 15 students who will be departing for Russia in September this year to study towards her master's degree in pedagogy education. We have resolved, honorable members, to take up scholarship offers that are strong and worthwhile for our country, but we will equally be spending from our own purse so far as sending capable students to excellent and world-class universities in the world. Honorable members, In June 2012, we launched the Apply Now campaign with an aim of creating awareness of career options and application procedures to be followed for post-school education and training. The intention was to reduce long queues and some of the chaos that generally take place at most of our universities at the beginning of each academic year. I am pleased to announce that the campaign has been a resounding success, and in this coming year, I will be conducting SRC roadshows where I will meet university and college SRCs to engage on many matters of concern, as well as how we can work together to minimize student protest, especially at the beginning of each academic year. Honorable Chairperson, let me conclude by thanking the President for yet again inviting me to his executive and the support he continues to give us. My utmost thanks goes to the Minister of Higher Education and Training for his guidance and support. I would also like to thank the Director General of the department, his deputies, and all staff for the work accomplished and for the work still to be done. I also wish to thank the Chief of Staff in the Ministry, my Head of Office and staff in my office for the tireless work and willingness to work beyond the call of duty. Finally, I would not have been able to serve in this calling without the unflinching support of my family, my friends, and my comrades, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. I now call upon Honorable Kubisa.
Seningaze nimemeze kangaka. Ake nisizeke nami. Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, honorable members, the NFP is aware of the huge role that the Department of Higher Education and Training has to play to ensure that a vision of a post-school system that can assist in building a fair, equitable, non-racial, and enhancement centers. On welcoming and supporting the budget of the Department of Higher Education and Training, which we support from the side of the NFP, we welcome the increase of 6.8% per annum from 34.36 billion in 2013 to 42 billion in 2016-2017. Honorable Chairperson, we need to tightly monitor the SETAs. Most of them show signs of financial mismanagement, as the report of the Auditor General showed. We need to value for money. SETAs have got to perform. They must produce a pool of skill that we need in the job sector. So far, their performance, some of them, has been very shoddy and very poor. The NFP would also push strongly for more teacher education colleges that are linked and accredited by universities, and would call for investment in science, maths, and technology. And educators who are in science and maths will have to be produced. Over and above educators, they are in commerce and accounting studies. Chairperson, whilst the NFP welcomes the increase and allocation of 6.1 billion in 2014-2015 financial year to 6.8 billion in 2016-2017, the department must deal with reports of mismanagement insofar as NSFAS is concerned. In some of the institutions, this kind of a picture compromises the basic tenet of equipping and preparing our students for their future. So, Honorable Minister, this must be dealt with once and for all. Obviously, acts of mismanagement and all these forms of misdemeanors that occur, it means that we have one thing to do: heads must roll. I would like to reiterate what I said during the briefing by the department. There is a need from the side of NSFAS to profile students according to their geographical location. That is where they come from which schools they come from, are the schools rural or urban in character, are the students coming from former Model C schools? What subjects do they do at universities and University of Technology and TVET centers? How long do they take to complete their studies? Where they are at the moment? What are they doing after completing their studies? Do they contribute to the socio-economic growth of our country? These are the pertinent questions that we need to ask ourselves. It might appear scary, but we need to ask if we really want value for money. For instance, the Department of Higher Education must account as to how students coming from poor communities benefit from NSFAS. There are our students who don't know about NSFAS, but we need to assist them in order to access education. And of course, we also need in TVET colleges, lecturers, and also trainers with skills and competencies that will assist our learners to compete in the job market. Having said, Chairperson, the Department of Higher Education will have to develop a clear system and modus operandi of tracking down graduates from TVET colleges in particular in order to assess where they are. Are they making a meaningful impact on our society? And of course, this is a job that can be done, and it must be done now. Honorable Chairperson, some of the TVET colleges do not perform well, and the other administration. The department will have to tell what strategies have been put in place, the turnaround strategies to ensure that these colleges do perform. Finally, Chairperson, the issue of student accommodation is a thorny issue, and in higher education institutions. The Department of Higher Education and Training must address it. The NFP would advocate a system whereby the department thinks on an agenda of permanent accommodation that would be owned by the department, that is affordable, so that our children are not lost in towns and in other areas when they go to get education in universities and technicals. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I now call upon Honorable Killen.
Chairperson, the Honourable Minister, Deputy Minister, the academia, the department, colleagues in the House. I want to at the outset quote two formidable human rights activists and what they said about education. The one from the African soil and the other an Afro-American. Both worked for the liberation of their people during the 1900s. The one is our revered Icon Madiba, and I want to quote another quote that he made. He said, "A good head and a good heart are always a formidable combination. But when you add to that a literate tongue or pen, then you have something very special," unquote. The other person is Malcolm X, a civil rights activist in the USA in the 50s. He was 39 when he was assassinated in 1965. He said, "Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today." Chairperson, successful nations of the world has proven time and again that a government's investment in an education system and the effective management of its outcomes, with due respect for the autonomy of all institutions, pays significant dividends for the nation's future social and economic prosperity. The Department of Higher Education and Training is tasked with developing capable, well-educated and skilled citizens who are able to compete in a sustainable, diversified and knowledge-intensive international economy and society, but which meets South Africa's developmental goals. But it should do so against the legacy of apartheid, which is very real. Chairperson, it is my privilege to focus on the university sector today and to highlight some of the successes and challenges in this sector. We know that 83% of the current financial year's budget goes to the sector, and it is in the main indirect transfers to the universities. A small portion of the money is earmarked for NSFAS, for the Council of Higher Education, and for the South African Qualifications Authority. We have to acknowledge certain achievements in the past 20 years. First of all, the university sector has almost doubled. Previous speakers, the number of enrolled students. Previous speakers mentioned that as well. In 1994, about 500,000 students were enrolled in the university sector. In 2013, this figure increased to almost 1 million. This represents 78% increase in the university enrollment. Secondly, we've had significant demographic changes in our country's student population. In 1990, only 32% of the student population was Black African. Since 2009, more than 2/3 of all university students are Black African. Thirdly, NSFAS. Several speakers have pointed to the challenges, but we must not underestimate its huge impact on the sector. It has already given 1.4 million students tertiary education opportunities. The amount allocated in 94, we must remember where we come from, was a mere 10.3 million in 1994. This year, more than 6 billion is allocated to providing opportunities for students from disadvantaged communities. Many NSFAS alumni now play an important role in our economy, in our public service, and generally in society. Sadly, despite the whopping increase in funding for NSFAS, only about 50% of deserving qualifying students can be funded. Chairperson, this is where need the private sector to dig deeper into their pockets. We need more bursaries for young people. And mind you, Honourable Minister, other departments can also come to the party. We need all departments in the public sector and in the private sector. They need to come forward to offer bursaries, because we have to overcome the challenge that we are facing. With an age cohort between 15 and 24, we have 10 million young South Africans. The Honourable Minister has indicated to our Portfolio Committee that he's focusing on the 3.5 million. But we must not forget the others. We need them to be developed to achieve their maximum potential. There is no alternative to a massive and concerted drive to equip our young people with knowledge and skills to take up their place in our economy. But we must also remember, the Honourable Bazoli has referred to poor research. We have had some significant increases. University research output has increased from about 5,500 in 2003 to 9,600 in 2010. Yet more needs to be done, and we acknowledge that. The Honourable Minister has already referred to the new universities. Despite significant progress, Chairperson, we also have to overcome specific challenges, and there are many. We have not yet established South African universities. Enrollments at historically white institutions continue to reflect a lower proportion of Black students, and the converse is also true. Historically, Black institutions are almost exclusively Black. This is not good for nation building and for social mobility. Secondly, a racial breakdown of graduation and dropout rates indicate that we have not achieved equity of opportunity and outcomes for disadvantaged students. Our throughput rate of 17% through our university sector also lags far behind the international norm for comparable countries of 25%, and I know that our NDP target is 30% by 2030. Due to overcrowding at some of the contact universities, we have to investigate opportunities for distant learning. And yes, there will be challenges that we have to confront. Like Bazoli referred to the dropout rate at UNISA. But we cannot, the Honourable Bazoli. But this necessitates broadband rollout across our country to become a national priority. Honourable Minister, we really need you to assist us in achieving that. The department, in collaboration with universities and other higher ed institutions, have come up with some strategies to address some of these challenges. The phasing in of the central application system for students, the Honourable Deputy Minister has referred to that, in particular to career option and guidance for students who have matriculated. Secondly, differentiation in course offerings at universities. We can no longer have historically white and historically black universities. We must have universities for specific courses that become well known for their output. Then we need to renew the academic profession, and we would like to thank the Honourable Minister and the department for an initiative to in fact address this very serious problem of an aging, racially imbalanced corps of lecturers and professors. We have to get more funding for postgraduate students. But fortunately, there is funding available through the National Research Foundation. Obviously, we need to attract people to a career in the academia. Those role models for our young children are so important. But the best students often go to very lucrative positions and they leave the academia. Chairperson, I would have loved to address some of the other challenges, but time will not allow me to do that. I would like to just make 2 or 3 remarks in summary. Yes, we need to improve the quality. The NDP has identified very serious shortcomings, and we need to look at that, and we will work a plan to address those. But basically, it boils down to backlogs of the past system, and we have to work through it all out. We have to bridge the academic gap. Certain township schools and people who qualify through those schools have difficulty to adapt in the academic world of universities. And this is where I would like to ask, and I'm going to do this in my mother tongue. Voorsitter, dit is belangrik dat ons 'n beroep doen op universiteite om weg te doen met van die ontgroeningspraktyke wat in baie opsigte as rassisties beleef word. Dit mag nie so wees nie, maar dit is soos wat dit beleef word. En om in steede daarvan hulle universiteite moderne instellings te maak waar studente mentorskappe en bykomende ondersteuningsprogramme kry. In steede van daardie soort van praktyke, het ons regtig nodig om te besef, as ons hierdie land wil red en na werklike sukses wil stuur, is dit nodig dat almal 'n rol speel. And yes, you can conclude and say, you can throw stones, but the fact is this. There are
Honourable
many
Member.
challenges, but South Africans are renowned for our ability to overcome challenges and to
Honourable
rise
Member.
above doom and gloom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson. The ANC supports the budget.
And now call upon Honourable Carter.
Chairperson, thank you. At the advent of democracy, a great hope was born. People everywhere had high expectations that finally every South African child would receive high-quality education. It is therefore not surprising that the NDP views the improvement expansion of higher education and training as critical to achieve the envisaged inclusive economic growth we are aiming for. The government has set itself ambitious goals. The aim is to have 10 million university graduates by 2030. Over the next 3 years, the department is aiming to have approximately 3 million students enrolled in higher education institutions. Honourable Minister, we need to ask the question, do we really need students to enroll, or does our country require graduates? If we scrutinise the statistics report released by the DG of Higher Education in December this year, Now, we have to thank him because it was, as far as I can understand, the first of this, but the unfortunate part is the timing. It is the 2010-11 that was only released in December 2013, but it really paints a gloomy picture. 16% of students enrolled successfully completed their undergraduate degrees. 18% of students enrolled obtained their master's degree. 12% of students enrolled obtained their doctoral degree. This has been issued by the Department of Higher Education. Minister, there was mention of distant learning. Just to give you stats that I've got from here as well. Distant learning boasts a whopping 8% undergraduate pass rate, 9% on masters, and 5% on a doctorate. I really think that we need to look at how we can deal with these problems. COPE believes that a big part of the blame and the failure also rests with basic education that sets such a low standard. The lowest standard in the world is set in South Africa. Monash South Africa said the graduation rate have ranged from 15% to 20% for several years now. Now, I also have to go back and say, it is not only now. I've got comments that I've got from the internet where people were saying that even in 1955, the pass rate was not very high. It was also about 20-25%. But the lack of academic preparedness is definitely a challenge. Universities not offering enough support is another problem. Academics who are specialists in their fields but not adequately skilled to teach. Course hopping without finishing the programs they started. Financial constraints. Then parents' dreams. It's dangerous. Minister, serious consideration should be given not only in career guidance, but also a high-level aptitude test that should be made available to grade 9s. Do we know what is the level of suicides in this country because scholars do not know what they want to do? But we also will not have a problem of course hopping if students know what they are skilled to go into. Minister, bridging and foundation courses are really not sufficient to try and improve academic performance. There's a need to provide non-academic support as student accommodation and adjusting to university life also impacts on students' academic achievements. A review report on student accommodation at the country's 23 universities published in February found that only 5.3% of first-year students, those arguably in the most need of accommodation, were university residences. The report also found that hunger was a major problem among students, with some going for days without having any food. A graduation goal of 20%, Minister, is not good enough, and COPE believes that a healthy graduation rate would be 50%.
Honourable Member, your
Chairperson,
time
thank you.
is over. I'll now call upon Honourable Suwela, and this is a maiden speech.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, honorable members and distinguished guests in the gallery, I greet you. I am honored and humbled by the opportunity to participate in today's budget vote number 17. I come from Utah, a rural village, Professor Bozoli, in Mpumalanga, just like the president who is coming from a rural background. Here you are likely to come across women and children who are moving around aimlessly because of either lack or shortage of opportunities for them to work or play. Honorable Chair, the picture I've just painted above is the same in every province. South Africa, like many of the developing countries, is experiencing a youth bulge. Economists like Mutali have argued that, I quote, the growing youth population could be an important demographic dividend if equipped with the right employable or self-employable skills. A large economically active population can contribute to falling poverty rates, but this demographic dividend will happen only if the economically active become engaged. With the right investment and continued progress through the demographic transition, in time, large youth population can become economically productive population that can drive the economy. In South Africa, this is not by any means fault of their own, but mainly as a result of a system that sought to exclude blacks in the mainstream economy by offering them inferior, useless education that will permanently condemn them to a life of poverty and suffering. The attitude of the then regime is correctly captured in the words of Dr. Hendrik Verwoerd when he said, and I quote, "When I have control over native education, I will reform it so that natives will be taught from childhood that equality with Europeans is not for them," and further stated that there is no place for the Bantu in the European community above the level of certain forms of labor. What is the use of teaching the Bantu child mathematics when it cannot use it in practice, end quote. Certainly, the Bantu child was not a person, but somewhat a thing, because it is referred as an it. I purposefully gave this background just to remind us, and especially those who have short memories, and will want the ANC to forget that the past injustices, to forget the past injustices, but then to remind them how the past influenced the present. At this point, I would also like to remind the honorable member, Professor Bozole, that all the problems he highlighted in her
Honorable
speech.
Suela, can you just take your seat?
Okay, thank you.
Honorable Carter.
Chairperson, is the member prepared to take a question?
No. No. At this point, I would like to remind the Honorable Professor Bozole as well that all the problems she highlighted in her speech is that as a direct result of the unjust past, not an ANC rule. The ANC merely inherited a contaminated education system. Chairperson, educational problems such as unequal access to school, unequal access to educational opportunities, inadequate funding, inadequate facilities, and shortage of educational material, inadequate qualified staff existed. These problems contributed immensely to the crisis we are facing today as a community and the country. The shortage of skills is well documented and need no further emphasis. The Freedom Charter drafted in Kliptown in 1955 by progressive organizations such as the African National Congress was a beacon in the struggle against apartheid, much as today's National Skills Development Strategy 3 is a roadmap in our struggle against poverty and inequality. Education is a central part in this effort, especially because it, amongst other things, addresses the needs of our youth. The sector education training authorities are central to skills development, and currently we have 21 seaters reduced from 23. As Honorable Posa has already alluded in her speech, that the department inherited the sector which had myriad of challenges ranging from maladministration and poor governance, lack of monitoring and evaluation, misalignment with education and training institutions, poor skills planning. Hence, there were numerous calls of the government to do away with the seaters. However, the sector plays an important role in the skills development of the country. Doing away with the seaters will merely compound the problem of skills shortage. There has been an improvement in the sector over the years since the function shifted to the Department of Higher Education and Training. There is now a greater coherence, accountability, improved employment of resources, better management of funds, and streamlining of their operations in order to fulfill their role as central cog of the skills training and job creation machinery as envisaged in the Minister Zimande's first budget speech of 2009. However, we are not claiming that all is well, but good work in progress. Sector education training authorities plays a role in TVET college system. This is in line with the National Skills Development Strategy 3 as it encourages a closer coordination and synergy between public TVET colleges and the SETAs. SETAs are to strengthen the TVET colleges and priorities then when it comes to training provision. The anchor of government's intervention on the skills development front has been the adoption of the National Skills Development Strategy. This strategy, amongst other things, sought to build a closer relationship between the SETAs and the public TVET colleges, the universities of technology and employees, in order to shift the focus of our country towards trade and occupational programs so as to increase the production of artisans and technicians, as well as to facilitate workplace training. Consequently, the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Blade Nzimande, declared 2013 a year of artisan. This project was a resounding success and was followed up early this year by the launch of the Decade of the Artisan by the Deputy Minister of Higher Education. Despite the challenges, the alignment has proved that with hard work and commitment, we can achieve more. We recommend the success of the SETAs and Indlela in exceeding artisan development target by 20% in 2011-2012 and by 28% in 2012-2013. These achievements show that we are on the way towards achieving the artisan target as envisaged in the National Development Plan. The recent National Skills Accord between the government and state-owned enterprises, business and labor, and all social partners to increase numbers of apprenticeship and to take on learners and interns for practical workplace experience includes a commitment by business to absorb TVET graduates. SETAs will also play an important role in the implementation of commitment of this accord. The ANC-led government will increase opportunities for workplace-based training and experience, which will be created through greater partnership between the sector education and training authorities, workplace and educational and institutions. Partnerships between employers, public TVET, universities, the universities of technology, private training providers, and SETAs are promoted so that the integration of education and training becomes a reality experienced by all South Africans. The real value add by SETAs is their understanding of labor market issues in their respective industrial and economic sector. SETAs must ensure that they are backed by employers and workers, are acknowledged as a credible and authoritative voice on skills, and create interventions and shape solutions that address needs with their sectors. The ANC will advance skills development to ensure employers and labor, in partnership with learning institutions, carry out more technical and artisan training. SETAs have set targets in addressing a work placement for youth and doing learnerships and those in TVET colleges. This partnership will facilitate synergy between sectors towards working towards a common goal. The SETA grant came into operation on the 1st of April 2013 and requires SETA to target funding towards structures, workplace learning and experience, promoting partnerships between education and training institutions and employers. This will assist to institutionalize this very important work with the post-school education and training. Over and above the work of the SETAs, we should take this moment to appreciate the work done by National Skills Fund in contributing to our skills development. I thought I should conclude with a good story of the NSFAS. In 2013-14, the NSFAS allocation did 382 million to University of Pretoria towards expansion of medical and veterinary facilities to increase student intake, 213 million to the University of Johannesburg towards the development of work-integrated learning facilities for engineering students, accessible to engineering students across South Africa, and a further 106 million towards the development of renewable energy training facilities. These stories are not in the public domain, and Honorable Chair, we should highlight them.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I'll now
Honorable members of Parliament. Before I forget, Honorable, I can't. The Minister has elaborated on quality to indicate what, of course, must take place in schools. And education for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, to be. I think, honorable countries and on improving roads. Can't we have a toll gate or e-toll to get more money for the size of the dog? That determines which one does the better work. But the fight in the dog, forming the way they think, we must not, thank you.
Plans of NSFAS, both in the short and medium term, reflect an ANC government and minister which has its priorities all wrong. Its plans further depict a government which is either completely out of touch or is determined to bury its head in the ground while students suffer in mass. Honourable Minister, you spoke earlier about shameful. If you truly understood the condition of our poor students, particularly black students, you would know that we should all be ashamed with what is taking place. Honourable Minister, I am mandated by our people to remind you of the thousands of young South Africans who hiked long distances from rural areas, in particular, in January of this year, to continue their studies, only for half of them to be told that their government did not budget sufficiently for them. I have previously asked you, Honourable Minister, what is your plan? And the budget and plans before us are clearly not aligned to the National Development Plan, which proposes that all students who qualify for NSFAS should have access to full funding. The NSFAS budget for 2014-2015, discounting Funza Lusaka and other funders, depicts a mere 0.96% increase from the previous budget. If this isn't sad enough, the general NSFAS allocation, which is the main indicator of access, has actually decreased by 3.7%. I warn you, Honourable Minister, for the upteenth time that this crisis will snowball next year, as the 50% of eligible NSFAS applicants turned away this year will now have to compete with a new batch of matriculants to pursue their futures. Furthermore, the medium-term NSFAS budget increase over the next 3 years is less than 1 billion rand, not discounting Funza Lusaka, other funders, and increases in student enrollments and increases in demand. Honourable Minister, the Working Group on Free Fee Higher Education submitted a final report in August 2013. Why has this report not been made public? Furthermore, we were misled to believe in the Portfolio Committee by the Deputy Director General of University Education, Dr. Parker, that 30 billion rand is required to assist eligible students. She failed to mention that in fact it is 9.8 billion rand required initially and 30 billion rand over a period of 3 to 4 years in terms of the notes we've received recently from the committee. The DA is calling for the NSFAS budget to immediately increase in accordance with the findings of the working group so as to make free higher education for poor qualifying matrics a reality immediately. We further call for the entire cost of NSFAS to be converted into a bursary on completion of studies, as well as the NDP proposal for non-qualifying students to have access to bank loans backed by state sureties. We reject the call by Dr. Parker to manage the expectations of students as a slap in the face of poor South Africans and reject this with the contempt that it deserves. Honourable Minister, the inadequate budget of NSFAS is not the only issue harming our people. The new ironically named student-centered model, which is being piloted and introduced at the cost of hundreds of millions of rands, has failed spectacularly. Funds for successful applicants who opt out cannot be used to assist other needy students. The criteria for accepting financially needy students is on a quintile basis, which has resulted in unqualified students receiving funding based on the school they attended, while genuinely needy students are told that there are insufficient funds for them. Nearly 50,000 student applications have gone missing at UNISA alone. There has been no academic appeals criterion for continuing students with extenuating circumstances in a particular year. The insistence of adopting both a 50% plus one and an N+2 progression rules as requirements for continuing funding disqualifies students with adverse performances in a particular year. Furthermore, repeat modules will now not be funded, which means that a single prerequisite module would prevent poor students from continuing or completing their studies, even if they will meet both progression rules. NSFAS has also made clear that it will not fund BTech qualifications, even though it is a prerequisite for diploma holders to enter postgraduate courses and access research funding. These affect the poor and vulnerable, Honourable Minister, and there should not be a double standard between the opportunity for poor students and those that are privileged. Honourable Minister, furthermore, even those students that are being funded are being treated without dignity or justice. the much vaunted SPAC system has been one of the root causes. It is a limited system which has prevented social development, Funza Lusaka, and disability-funded students, amongst others, from accessing the full extent of their allowances. The majority of NSFAS students only started receiving meal and book allowances as late as May and June of this year. How does the minister expect these students from poor backgrounds to study or live with dignity thousands of kilometers from home, without a book, without a meal, until May and June of this year? These very same students, set up for failure, will then be told, according to the now progression rules and the rules that we do not fund repeated modules, they will then be told that they cannot be funded and they will not be able to continue with their studies or complete their studies, though no fault of their own. Honorable Minister, students and institutions are like outraged, with UCT effectively withdrawing from the pilot this year. In fact, most of the students are now being withdrawn from that pilot. And you will know, Honorable Minister, of a meeting that has taken place this year by the institutions who have openly voiced their concerns on the matter. How can NSFAS plan to expand this model to 70% of institutions next year and 100% in 2016 when it has failed so dismally with less than 30% of the institutions currently? Honorable Chairperson, we stand with the young people of this country in calling for free higher education for poor qualifying matrics. This is certainly feasible if only our priorities are corrected. Honorable Swela, I certainly hope and am certain that the ghost of Farvoet is not sitting in Treasury saying that we shouldn't allocate the necessary funds in order to make this a reality. We have shown in our alternative budget that it is certainly feasible, that 24 billion rand can be saved by government through simply streamlining departments and programs, that 30 billion rand can be saved by simply cutting corruption. That has nothing to do with the ghost of Farvoet. And I agree that there are many problems that we've inherited from apartheid. I agree that there have been many problems that we have inherited from apartheid, and I applaud the department on the work done to correct those. But please understand, Honorable Minister, that this issue in particular is something that we can do something about, and I beseech you to do something about it on behalf of our poor South Africans across this country. Honorable Minister, we call on NSFAS to amend its plans if we are to support those plans. Certainly the current plans are not going to benefit the poorest of our people and the majority of our people. And we call on you, Honorable Minister, to make a solid commitment when you speak at the end of this budget debate, because you will be speaking, that you will make fee-free higher education a reality immediately, as it is certainly feasible. And I would appreciate that on behalf of all South Africans. Thank you very much.
May I call upon Honorable Kekana?
Can I feel the mic? Can I feel it? Okay, sure. Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, I hear the voice of Honorable Chief Whip, members of Parliament, guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am actually today the second student who's taught by Honorable Belinda Bosoli. And I must say that one thing she emphasized was that we should be critical. Academic life says we must be critical, constructively. Now, I would like to criticize her if she doesn't mind, because often when people say you must be critical, they mean criticize others except me. The first issue very quickly is that she say ministers are taking their children to liberal universities or English-speaking university. She quoted Teflo Forte, that they are there, why don't they take them there? The point is this. She knows Forte and Teflo and all black universities were not designed to develop South Africa, but they were designed because of a Verwoerdian doctrine of separate development. Political reason was the development. That is why all these black universities, there's no faculty of engineering, according to that legacy of separate, because blacks were permanent in the rural area and temporary sojourners in the urban area. Now, the very most important point is that one of the reasons, you see, to simplify everything to finance, I don't think is fair, because it isn't just money. The problem of colonial regime and how it impacted us is very complex. Take the language, for example. At these English universities, I was there with Professor Pezzoli when the issue of the language was one of the causes of the high failure rate. Because experts said people perform better in education when they learn in their mother language. And all of us went to vets and were taught in English, which was not a mother tongue. And this is what applies to all Africa. You go to Germany, Germans learn from primary up to tertiary into German. The French, even a new state like Israel, which was established in 1948, they learn in Hebrew. So just to simplify and reduce everything to finance, I don't think it helps our minister address the problem, because the problem is complex. I went fortunately, to TEFLO before I went to VET. At TEFLO, I was studying political science. Marxism was banned, you know. But when I went to VET, I was surprised that people are learning Marxism here in the same country. They are even reading No Middle Road by Joe Slovo, who was banned in the country. So, so in social sciences, there was freedom, academic freedom. In natural sciences, the students who came to VET, their first test in engineering, some of them failed the first test. And when they spoke to their white colleagues, they were told, no, they were testing us on our maths at matric. Why do you fail matric maths when you have passed matric? So we realized that actually the maths that we were taught at matric is not the same maths that whites are taught. Whites are taught the type of maths that prepares them for engineering. With us, I don't know, some funny maths that was taught there. So these are the complexities of our country, and I don't think it helps to reduce all these complexities that are there in education to just a matter of finance. As people say, you don't just throw money at yes. Now, the last point I want to make about this is that the movement in this country of people is from rural area to urban area. The population of people generally in the urban area is big. Even if you are to establish Faculty of Engineering at TEFLO, which is not in Limpopo, which is a rural town, but in the villages at TEFLO, it wouldn't attract the type of academic that you need as the urban area university attract academics. So just to have put these universities, as they were called bush universities over there, it deprived them of so many resources that are necessary for any university that must be up to international standard, that the type of resources that that type of university would need. So I'm saying the colonial thing is something that we perhaps underestimate because it didn't affect others, it affected us. But I can tell you, up to today and for maybe another century, we'll be struggling with this thing to overcome. Now, going back to my speech, I'm supposed to speak about Minister, the the technical and vocational colleges. The new design of our education system has excited a lot of us because the emphasis has been the ratio would be university 40%, which is a German model, and technical and vocational would be 60%. Because the point is, you're not going to get everybody in this country being a professor or a doctor. But it is very important that skills, people have criticized us that the type of system of education is teaching people academic, but we're not teaching people, while we're teaching them to think, we don't teach them to do. We need doers now. And this is why the minister said the ratio, more people must go into technical and vocational. And I hear that for every engineer, you actually need about 15 technicians. So that emphasis is really exciting me because this, not just for economic development, I think it will address all the 65 matriculants who are unemployed because industry is saying, well, you've got matric in history, I can't use history in this company. But those matriculants will be able to go into technical and vocational, both gentlemen and ladies, and get skills that are in line with the interests of the economy. And while doing that, they'll be able to upgrade themselves from poverty. Remember that industrial revolution in Britain, when it came, it actually, through the system of journeyman and apprenticeship, trained a lot of peasants in feudalism. It actually, with capitalism, replaced feudalism. In feudalism, peasant would not move upwards. If you were born a peasant, you'd die a peasant. But through industrial revolution, they were trained, and a guy would be then an artisan, either own his own company or work for somebody and move out of peasant. So it was a positive move at that stage. And we think here, these technical and vocational colleges can help our nation to train our youth so that they move out of the class that they are locked in, working class, and be future entrepreneurs and skilled people that can make a livelihood out of their skill. We hope that private sector, with the assistance of CETAs that must integrate the relationship between colleges and private sector will open up their doors so that the colleges don't just give theory, but there's a factory floor where they can go and gain experience about the theory they've gained. Unless we work together in this country, in the PPP, public-private partnership, we are ourselves dooming our own country. So it is very important that, Minister, the new design of universities, number one, technical and vocational colleges, number two, and community colleges, number three, will absorb everybody, the old and the young, whoever is interested in improving his own personal life to get the opportunity for training and improve his own life. I know there's an eagerness, there's a burning desire out there for people not to be a crying nation, but to do something about their own life. Is that they come from somewhere where they were deprived all the time. And now opportunities have been opened up. Opportunities that the opposition, I think, should emphasize rather than emphasize the weaknesses that are there. I think opportunities are greater than the weaknesses. And South Africa is moving to greater heights. I wish I could live for another 30 years to see this South Africa that will develop into first world country. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you. I now call upon the Honorable the Minister of Higher Education and Training to respond to the debate. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Let me just highlight this matter, which I had wanted to talk about. Just to say that one of the most important things that our department is doing is to really place great emphasis on linking education and the workplace. As our slogan goes, turning every workplace into a training space. I'm very pleased also to say that we are in discussions with the Department of Trade and Industry to actually allocate some BBBE score points for those employers that are particularly training black youth. So, as to be. SETAs are opening offices in rural areas in our TVET colleges, and we will also be reviewing the SETA landscape. By the way, working together with the SETAs, Professor Kubona, I think you were raising this matter. We will give you the information as soon as it is available. We're also very proud on our skills work that we've actually done a skills profile of the kind of people we need for the Presidential Infrastructure Program, the 18 SIPs. Allow me then also, Chairperson, to really thank the ANC and all the other parties that supported the budget. You're supporting progress. And also thank all our institutions that despite the many challenges we are facing, we are working cooperatively. Whether it's our universities, our TVET colleges, our SETAs, our quality assurance institutions, and so on. Honorable Pozzoli, I'll start by replying to you as a social scientist that the problem with the DA is that it thinks in dichotomies, not dialectically. It's quantity versus quality instead of quantity and quality. What the DA would want us to do, to say, because there are so many challenges in the TVET colleges, don't do anything, don't expand until you have improved quality. That's why you will not understand the concept of fixing the aeroplane in the air, because that's dialectical, it's not dichotomous. The second problem with the DA, your point of departure, you know, the last 5 years, they've failed to find fault with the work we are doing in the department. Because even the faults, we admit them first ourselves. Now they've been given a mandate. They changed their representatives 3 times in the previous portfolio committee. Now they've been mandated, just go for Nzimande, at whatever cost, blindly. But I must say that, Honorable Pozzoli, I am really shocked at the condescending and patronizing manner with which you talk about our historically disadvantaged institutions. It really is shocking. And we are also thinking in terms of black and white. And we are former black universities, horror. Former white universities, perfect. You are dismissing, by the way, you are dismissing, yes, that's dichotomous thinking. That's exactly what I'm saying. You're forgetting also, by the way, the Professor Makgoba study that we are dismissing. We have a challenge in this country's universities. Our senates are lily white. That's what that study is coming up with, and it's the truth. And we can't move forward without our universities coming up with a strategy to tell us how are we going to actually make our senates, which is our professors, to be more representative of the South African community. You're silent about that. You're silent about that. Also, you seem not to be collecting information. Forte was never under administration. And in fact, the institution has improved significantly. and not to understand the conditions under which people work in the historically disadvantaged institutions, to be so insensitive, actually makes me to doubt what contribution we are going to be making here. Also, your dichotomous thinking. We are thinking only from the standpoint of universities. That's why you don't understand when we talk dialectically about post-school and the relationship amongst these institutions. And all universities, by the way, this thing of saying, I support some universities and not other universities, it's not true. If I had time here, I would tell you the projects that we are doing across our university sector. These are all our universities. No, don't try and tell me when I speak the truth, you say that the time is up. Honorable Kasim, you mustn't come to Parliament and speak as if we are in a DASO, DA Students Organization rally. This is not a DASO rally. The system we are saying is failing. We have only started this year as NSFAS to experiment with it. And what is the aim? Is to make sure that the money we give students to eat, they don't spend it on other luxuries and other things. That's all what it is. It hasn't failed. We only started at the beginning of this year. It's because DASO doesn't like it, because it ordinarily does not affect your typical DASO student. That is the reason why we are actually talking like that. And I think that we have a long way to go together, honorable DA members. I want to come to the committee and actually raise a whole range of these issues so that you don't come and grandstand here. We talk facts, we engage, and we analyze. Babu Mponchan, I thought that today you were, I don't know, you were a little bit... but we are glad that the IFP is actually supporting this. To EFF, just in closing, you don't start a university with 10,000 people, but I'm not amazed why you don't understand. I'm not surprised why you don't understand about universities, and I will share that with you some other day. Thank you very much to everybody who participated in the debate.
Order, 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 honourable members. Thank you, Honourable Minister. Order, honourable members. Members are reminded that the debate on Parliament's budget vote will take place. Order, honourable members. Members are reminded that the debate on Parliament's budget vote will take place at 2 p.m. in the chamber. That concludes the debate and the business of this extended public committee, and the committee will now rise.
He was allocated 20 minutes.
But that means he saved 4 minutes and you could have given him 4 minutes. So I think they're going to save another 2 minutes. But what do we do with Tikana? You can't give it to the minister. That's not allowed. But when I wanted to give it to him,
Thank you.